But when I'm looking at the Texans, man, the Texans are in trouble. I don't think we're talking about that enough. They look bad, Mike. They look like an average team. And this is a team that a lot of people pick like me that could potentially, with the additions that they had in the offseason, that could potentially push the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't see that happening with the Texans. I mean, they look like they've regressed on the defensive side of the ball. They're really inconsistent in the secondary, the offensive line. Yes, Joe Mixon, he's probably the comeback player of the year. But at the end of the day, you look at the pressure that's on C.J. Stroud. He never looks comfortable. Every time he's back there, he's looking at the pressure as opposed to looking at the wide receivers and the running backs. And I just think that this team is in trouble. D'Amico Ryans, he's got to add a couple more guys or this team's going to be in trouble.
Well, they complete the sweep of the Colts on Sunday. They have a 2-game lead in the standings, 6-2 versus 4-4. And it's essentially a 3-game lead because if it's a tie, you win the division because you've won both games against the Colts. Now, all of a sudden, it feels like there's an opening for the Colts. That Minnesota game for Indianapolis on Sunday night gets more interesting because they're flipping the Joe Flacco, and they have an opportunity because the Texans, kind of fraudulent at 6-2, kind of not as good as the record would suggest. And you mentioned Stroud. Here he is after the game, along with head coach D'Amico Ryans, talking about what went wrong for a team that I thought was going to end up at 7-2 when the game was over.
The frustrating part about it is, to play well in the first half and not come out the second half and not tackle the proper way, not stopping the run, all right? And also when it comes to it's just everything about it, not protecting, getting the quarterback hit, that's just not good football. So the frustrating part about this is, we didn't come out and we didn't execute well enough to win the game. We didn't make plays in the second half to win the game. So that's frustrating, but that's the NFL. Like, if you want to win, your playmakers have to step up and make plays, and that's what we have to see moving forward.
We just got to honestly just play football better, execute better, stop pointing the finger, and realize, at the end of the day, like, this is not winning football, and we can't keep squeezing our way by every game. We are a really good football team. We have a lot of really good football players. Once we buy into the systems and what is being, coached, and also we got to be able to have leadership to take over. I believe, this isn't the end, but this is definitely a great wake-up call for us to, tighten up the ship. And, this is now playoff football is November, December. So we got to be able to, this is going to be the chunk of our schedule. A lot of great teams we're playing on prime time, and, we got to be able to find ways to win.
By saying what he said, and it was indirect, but the message is clear. When you say we can't be pointing fingers, that means somebody's pointing fingers. When he says we can't have guys not buying in, that means people aren't buying in. There are deeper problems lurking just below the surface for the Texans, and C.J. Stroud gave us just a little glimpse of it by talking about pointing fingers and not buying in. And he didn't say who, and he could have blamed the offensive line. He didn't, which I think is smart. He blamed himself. He's got to play better, he said. The offensive line's got to play better. But he's right. To be a leader of this team, he's got to identify where the flaws are, and he's got to try to fix them. If you've got guys that aren't buying in, if you've got guys that are pointing fingers, you're not going to win.
Okay, what he's saying is he knows who's not buying in. When he makes a statement like that, when you're a winning team, you know who's buying in, you know who's not buying in. So what he's basically saying is we have a lot of young guys on our team, and they don't understand how to be professionals. They do it every once in a while. They don't do it every single day. They're still learning how to be professionals. And the young guys have a tendency, well, I'm not getting the ball. They're pouting, they're walking around. At the end of the day, he's the quarterback, so he knows the temperature of the entire locker room. He hears everything. He hears all the conversations and everything. And that's the problem. They have a lot of young guys on their team, and they're not fully committed. They don't know how to be pros. And that's what they're going through. They're going through some inconsistency, some ups and downs. And that's what's going to happen. But he has to continue to hang in there. You have to pull young guys to the side and say, hey, man, this is what you need to be doing. If you need some help, meet me here at 6:30. Let's start in the weight room. Let's start, watching film. Let's go and eat breakfast together. Let's have those conversations. That's how you build trust and you build that unity amongst your teammates. And he sees it, Mike. He sees it. So he's basically calling it what it is. And you're right, Mike. There's a lot more deeper problems than just catching a ball or missing the wrong gap. There's other guys in that locker room that's not doing what they're supposed to do because they feel comfortable right now, Mike. They had a successful season. They look on paper, hey, we got all these guys. We should be in a championship. It doesn't work like that. You have to earn everything you get.
And a lot of people, me included, had high praise for DeMeco Ryans last year in his first season as head coach of the Texans. He should have been the coach of the year for 2023. Yep. But it's on him at some level, too, to identify and correct these things. If you've got guys that aren't buying in, well, okay, if you're not buying in and you're one of the guys that's playing, then you get your ass on the bench. Or we're going to find somebody else. We won't activate you for the game. There's going to be a consequence if you don't buy in. There's going to be a consequence if you're pointing fingers and not doing your own job. I mean, so many of the things, and look, I got some opinions about Bill Belichick as a guy who has way too many media jobs, but as a game day coach, as a preparation coach, I mean, I don't remember anybody dropping the ball before they crossed the goal line for the New England Patriots. I don't remember hearing a whole lot of talk about guys pointing fingers and not buying in. In New England, if you didn't buy in, they would buy you out.
Let me say this. I look at the Texans, and it's almost like they're getting caught up in their own hype. They've been on the national stage. They got 3 straight primetime games. I think all this attention and all this that they're receiving might be taking a lot out of them, Mike. And it's hard a lot of times for a young team to handle a lot of success and a lot of attention. They struggled versus the Colts, and they had Anthony Richardson, who looked absolutely terrible in the first half last week. So there's a lot of issues. I mean, you just look at how inconsistent, win, loss, win, loss. It's just, and then you lose it at the Jets Thursday Night Football. That was just a really, really bad loss. And DeMeco Ryans, he has to build confidence back into this team because they look really, really bad.
And the rest of the schedule, yeah, there's some AFC South games peppered in there, and the Dolphins aren't what we thought they were going to be. Lions primetime, Cowboys primetime, and then week 16, 17, we're going to have them on NBC and Peacock at the Chiefs. They're going to Kansas City to face the Chiefs. Then they got the Ravens on Christmas Day. They have some high-profile games, and what we've seen so far of them. Now, look, it was kind of a sluggish, ugly game. You were in Houston for that Week 2 game, and that was more about Caleb Williams and the Bears not showing up. But on the road, they have yet to play a game against a good team or a team that was supposed to be good and isn't, like the Jets, at least not so far, and come out of it looking good. And so there's something missing there. They've made some great moves. They've done some great things. C.J. Stroud has checked all the boxes so far. Now he's facing real adversity. He and DeMeco Ryans together, they're facing it. What are they going to do about it? How are they going to react to it? Because the Lions are going to come to town, and we know how good the Lions are right now. And you're going to be there to witness it coming up in 9 days. They better get themselves ready for what's coming because the best team in football right now, in my opinion, the Lions, is coming to town. And if they sense weakness, they are going to pound you like they pounded the Titans. They're going to take no prisoners. They're going to show no mercy. And you're going to realize that, man, maybe we aren't as good as we think we are. And the sooner they acknowledge that and get to work, the better off they'll be.
The Lions are hungry, and that's the thing about the Lions. The Lions are hungry, and they can beat you offensively. They can go 4 wides and make it a shootout. They can line up with two backs in the backfield, I formation, and run the ball down your throat. And Jared Goff basically is the MVP or at least the offensive player of the year, how well he's playing. But this big physical offensive line, I don't see a team like the Houston Texans and their inconsistent play on both sides of the ball. And C.J. Stroud, we start to have to question him now because he looks like he's a little nervous back there, Mike. It's not like last year he was dropping back. He's in the country club. He had plenty of time to figure out where everything was at. It's not like that now. Teams are preparing. Teams have more tape on CJ. They have more tape on the Houston Texans. And now that you don't have those big play wide receivers, no one's afraid of them. No one's afraid of those deep shots down the field. Tank Dell is a good player, but he's not a number one. You can easily take him away. He's a smaller guy. He's not a big target. He's extremely fast. but no one's really afraid of that. They need to get Nico Collins back. He's the guy that really opens up this offense, continue to feed Joe Mixon. And Joe Mixon, he looks fresh, he looks young. And maybe if you run him 25 to 30 times, maybe he doesn't look like that in the next month or so. But in order to win these games, you're going to have to use or overuse Joe Mixon because he's the key guy to that offense.
They're hoping to get Nico Collins back for Week 10. He's on injured reserve from a hamstring injury that happened on a long touchdown catch in the win over the Bills. Without him and without Stephon Diggs, only 3 guys caught passes last night. There were 8 guys targeted. Only 3 caught passes. Tank Dell, 6 for 126. Robert Woods, 2 for 44. And Dalton Schultz, 3 for 21. That's it. 11 for 20 for 191 yards with C.J. Stroud. He had 86 passing yards 12 days ago in Green Bay. They've got to get more out of him. He's got to get more out of his abilities, and it helps if you have an offensive line that buys him enough time that he can find whoever's open. But if they get Nico Collins back, that should make a difference, and they really need him for that game coming up against the Lions. So this could be 2 teams going in very different directions, and the Jets may rise and the Texans may fall, and that outcome last night may be the tiebreaker. Who knows? If the Colts pick them off in the division, maybe last night's game is the tiebreaker that gets the Jets in and throws the Texans out.
And the Houston offensively, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to get CJ back, just getting some easy completions, whether it's quick wide receiver screens, being a little bit more creative on the offensive front, maybe taking a couple shots. I don't know, maybe some deep overs, just being a little bit more creative because there's no reason why CJ Stroud should have struggled the way he struggled the last couple of weeks. 11 for 30, 191 yards. Even when you don't have the receivers that you want, you have to adjust the offensive game plan. Everything can't be, just these big plays. You have to get the ball out of his hands quick. Get him some easy throws that help build his confidence. Work the tight end a little bit more. So they got some work to do, not just on the defensive side of the ball, but offensively as well.
And, this is the time of year that they start to line up the names for the potential head coaching candidates. Last year, offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick was a hot candidate. This year, he's not going to be. This is part of it, too. Hey, this is your moment. Wow. This is your time. This is your chance. Well, because the offense isn't performing. If the offense isn't performing, owners on other teams aren't going to look at Slowick and say, we want to make him a head coach.
I don't understand this. Like, just because you're good at calling plays, what makes you fit? Everyone, he's great at calling plays, so let's make him a head coach. What do we know about his personality? Do we know that he can run? No, prove to me 2, 3, 4 years that you're a really good offensive coordinator instead of elevating these guys because they had a great year, because they have the rookie of the year or something like that. It's just crazy to me.
I know.
Go ahead.
It's one of the great things about football because the people who are making the decisions on who the coach should be don't know a damn thing about what they're doing. They just had enough money to buy a team. That's why I love it. Or they inherited the team. They don't know what they're doing. They get ideas from the media, and every year it's, this team's doing well on offense. Well, their offensive coordinator must be a head coaching candidate. So my point is, it isn't going to happen this year. It's not even going to be a conversation point this year if they don't turn things around and start winning some games with a more convincing offensive display.
Hey, Mike, let me mention this too. Let me mention this too. I was looking at Brian Flores, and I'm not saying he's not meant to be a head coach eventually, but just think if he stayed in that defensive coordinator role, maybe a couple, 2 or 3 extra years, kind of continue to learn and grow, I think that would have made him a better head coach. But we're so quick to elevate a guy because he's a great play caller. Just because he can lead 25 guys on defense doesn't mean that he can lead 50-something guys, 60-something guys, in practice squad included, in the big picture of things. So I'm not saying these guys don't deserve, but to me, prove it more. Prove it more. It's not just a 1-year deal. You got to prove it that you can do it more consistently, and then let's elevate these guys. But Ben Johnson right now, he's probably the only assistant that I can see really being elevated to that position of head coach because he's an excellent play caller, and I think he's an excellent leader of those men.
And even then, the job is so fundamentally different that you really don't know whether or not a guy can do it until you give him a chance to do it. And for every former coordinator who becomes a great head coach like Tony Dungy, and he tells that great story about being in Tampa Bay, and somebody came in and said, hey, when we're in the preseason, our preseason trip to Buffalo, what hotel do you want to stay at? It's like, why are you asking me? Well, you're the head coach. It's like, so you got all sorts of different things you got to deal with now, and you communicate differently. You deal with the media a lot more often. Your game day responsibilities are different, and you qualify for the chance to show that you can do a very different job than the one you do by doing well as a coordinator. It really makes no sense, but it is a roll of the dice with all of them. But my point is this. We're not going to hear Bobby Slowick's name very much unless the Texans iron out some of the rough spots we saw last night and start winning some of these games. Last year, they benefited from nobody's watching them, and they were able to just win games. Now this year, everybody's watching. 2 more in a row. Lions and Cowboys, Sunday night and Monday night. You can't hide.
Those guys, and that's another thing that C.J. Stroud was talking about, and which really frustrates him. He knows the type of team that they have and the potential, but he doesn't see these guys going all in. They feel comfortable because of their success last year. And that's the problem with young guys. It's like once you have success, they don't want to push themselves to go to that next level. And that's what CJ is saying. Look, guys, our back's against the wall. We need everybody. We need everybody focused. We need everybody honed in. We don't need guys in the club. We don't need guys at the strip club. Those are the things that you have to say, we're not doing those things. We're going to be all in. Hey, guys, let's get in here. Let's lift weights early. It's about accountability, especially when you're struggling as a team. And that's what DeMeco Ryans has to do. He has to let these young guys know the importance of doing things right all the time. And then I think you're going to see the Houston Texans gradually improve, Mike.
When and how did that light go on for you as a young player?
I had some really good veterans that say, hey, man, great game, but don't feel good about yourself. You're only good as your last game. So that really kept me humble. Having those veterans and seeing guys like a Junior Seau, seeing guys like Richard Seymour, Willie McGinnis, Tom Brady, no matter how much success they have, they would always come in and they will work harder. They will come in a little bit earlier because they've had success. And, they never want to feel like they're complacent. But it comes from your teammates. It comes from your coaches. And it's got to come from within.
I still would have loved to have witnessed you walking into the facility at 6 a.m. and Tom's there and says, "Good afternoon, Rodney."
And he said it plenty of times. And I'm like, Tom, I'm not doing this with you 5:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. You are nuts. You go to bed at 9 o'clock. I go to bed at 12.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.